Now remember in the last video where I made this whole photo a little bit brighter, the thing is what I didn't like so much about it is now that the sky is a little too bright for me, a little too bright. And looking at it, also I find it a little too magenta. So I'm gonna maybe back down a little bit the magenta and maybe back down a little bit the warmth here. I think I want to go a little bit more towards the blue. Yes, something like this. But we're going to improve this a lot. So now let's look at the first tool that I've called the gradient filter. It's here, that little square here. So you click on it, and when you do that, you've got basically a lot of different sliders here. And if there is anything happening, you can click here and take any of this. So what I'm trying to do is make the sky a little bit darker. So I'm going to go to exposure. And in exposure now, all the sliders went down to 0 except exposure. What do I want to do? I want to make the sky a little darker. So I'm going to make this a little darker. And maybe I want to add back a little bit of blue in the sky. So I'm going to add a bit of blue. So I'm doing two things, okay? But right now, nothing's happening. I got a little cross here. If I click one time and I hold on my mouse and I go down here a second time, look what happens. Whatever I did here is at full strength from here to the first line. And then from the first line to the last line is on a gradient. So if I now make that last line much shorter, you see the gradient is much shorter. If I make it bigger, it's much smoother. Maybe I want to do something like this. And I can also back it up, because on the gradient now it's kind of nice. And if you want to see just that gradient and nothing else, you can click here, before and after. So I just kind of close the photo a little bit. I like that. Okay, why not try to do another gradient here with the same value? So you just click and drag, and then whatever value you had is happening. There is something that I like to do, which is kind of like what I call close the photo, which is I make the top a little dark, I make the bottom a little dark, and then in the middle, it's a little bit brighter. So that's kind of cool. I like that. Let me show you the before and the after. Now the thing is, this photo was taken with an ND filter. That's why it's very magenta. And I want to bring back some of the sunset that was there. And I just want to make it more interesting. So we're going to jump into the next filter. So this one I'm going to click on done. I'm done with it, which is this one. And this is really important. This is called the radial filter. So I'm going to click on it. And it's the same idea. I can choose a value. So in this case, I'm going to go to temp. Everything is going to come down to 0 except temp. I want to add some yellow. I want to add some magenta and maybe a bit of exposure, and I'm going to make one big circle. Now something weird is happening here because all these values now are happening outside of my circle. I want this to be inside, so I'm going to click here on invert mask, and by doing that, check it out, I click that, now the reverse happens. So whatever I'm doing here only happens in my circle. It's like if I had a big sun and I was playing with my photo. So I'm going to put this over here where the sun was, maybe here. And now I can adjust. It's way too strong. The exposure is too strong. The yellow is too strong. I want it a little bit, but not too much. Okay? And let's see, before, after. It's a huge change. It's a huge change. You can totally bring back the sunset. Maybe a little bit too much. I'm going to back it down a little bit here and back it down a little bit there. And so feathering is a very important factor. Let me show you what it means. If I put down this to 0, no feathering, you see how the circle is like, it looks completely fake. But if I go the opposite, all the way, it's going to make a very feather selection, and that's going to blend in much better. So I'm going to do that. Okay, and again, if you want to see the before and after just of the real circle, you click here, before and after. I'm going to click on done, and then press the backslash key, before, after. Before, after. Now this photo is really starting to come to life. Now, let's see what else we can do. Well, we got a brush. Brush is the same idea. It's you have different settings. So on this one, I'm going to go to exposure to make sure everything comes down to 0. I'm just going to add a bit of exposure. The only thing is a brush has feathering. So let's say I'm going to put the feather down to 0 and a high exposure. The great thing is it's got a size too, and you can use the middle mouse. So I'm going to make a small size. I'm going to start brushing. You see, it looks kind of really fake because you can really see what I'm doing. So I'm going to press delete to undo that. I don't want to do that. So I'm going to put feathering all the way to 100. And now when I brush, it's much smoother. But it's still a little bit too much visible. So I'm going to press delete. So what you want to do, and that's my formula, is I want to add the flow and density a bit low and maybe that value a bit low and make a little bigger brush. And I want to add maybe a little bit of white here and a white there. And just, make this part of the photo a little bit brighter. Maybe here a little bit, maybe here a little bit, And that's called dodge and burning. The reason it's called dodge and burning is because back in the days when they used to make the prints, they had a paper on the wall that was a negative. And then that was a positive, sorry. So it was a paper, and they would project a negative against that paper. And the longer it was projected, it was burning the photo. It was making this part more contrasty and darker. But if you would take like a spoon or something, and you would dodge the light, meaning you would stop the light from going on the paper, it would make wherever the spoon is brighter. Thus the term dodge and burn. Dodge and burn means making brighter or darker. So we burned the corners of the photo and we dodged the inside to make it more interesting. You see, photography means writing with the light. If you complexify your light, and it's up to you, it's an art, you can go completely unreal. This photo is already unreal to start with because it was shot with an ND filter, so a human eye doesn't see what an ND filter does. It doesn't have all this blurriness. So in any case, it's a work of art. But I'll show you some stuff which is more realistic. This one is a little more fancy. And let me show you the before and after the brush. Before, after, before, after. Now there is some other options with the brush that I'll show you in later video because it's quite a tool. So I can close this now. Now let's say that you want to change something. You're like, oh yeah, I wanted the gradient to go down, or I don't like that brush stroke. Well, you can edit anything. I can click here, go back here on the gradient, and you see there is some pins there. I can click on the pins, and actually if I leave my mouse over, you can see in red what we call the mask, what is being affected. So I can go here and I can just make that gradient a bit lower if I want to. And I can make this one maybe a bit less if I want to, and click on done. Same thing with the radial circle. I can go back here and I can move that circle a little bit around, maybe make it here a little bit more on the left because it's already very bright here. So it could be more interesting to make it brighter there, and click on done. And same thing with the brush. I can go back here, click on the brush. If I hover, I can see where I brushed. And you're like, oh yeah, but I don't like that I brushed here, for example. Well, I can select it and I can go to erase, and now you see my brush has a minus, and I can just erase what I did. And if you want to see what you're doing, you can click here on show selected mask overlay. When I click there, I can see where I brushed, and I can just erase, like, okay, I don't want the brush stroke to be here, I just want it to be on top. You see how I'm erasing a little bit the red? I can click that off, and now the brush only affects that part of the photo. So before, after. It takes a little bit of practice, but the brush, the radial filter, and the linear gradient is really the tools in Lightroom that's really going to make your photo. Okay, a couple of more things on this one. I'm not going to show you this section, not this section. Okay, we're going to go directly to details, which is the sharpening. I can click here. Now, this is a very low resolution photo because I shot this with a 12 million pixel camera. So, and this is a 5K screen, so that's why even zooming in doesn't show much. But I want to add some sharpening, and I have a formula for this, which I really like, which is that this one was shot at 50 ISO, if I remember well. So there's not much noise. So usually when it's shot at 50 ISO, I'm going to go to 90 of sharpening, about. See here how it says 90, 91 in this case. Okay, and I'm going to go here to noise reduction, and I'm going to go at 10. I want noise reduction and sharpening to be about 100. It's a formula I've been using for years. It works for me, and I just give it to you as a tip. And it's pretty simple. Okay, now let's see. That's basically it on that did the trick on noise reduction. The only other thing I want to show you is the lens correction. And by default it was click, but you see, if I click enable profile correction before and after, I shot this with what lens? 1635, 2470. And 2470 is a bit of a barrel effect. It makes a bit round in the corner. It takes that out when you enable that. chromatic aberration, there's not much in this photo, but what chromatic aberration basically is usually on lower end cameras or lenses, when you have a lot of sun, you can have like little red or green fringes around some of your lines here. I don't have any there, but I put it there in case. Okay, and last but not least, transform, I'm going to show you that later. I want to go down to camera calibration because that really affects the colors. By default, you got Adobe Standard, and here, based on your brand that's using Sony, Canon, Nikon, or Fuji, you're going to get different settings. But once you're done with your retouching, sometime you can go there and click, for example, on camera landscape, just to see how it's going to interpret your color. It's pretty crazy what it did here. I don't like that. I'm going to go to neutral. Okay, there's not much colors. So basically, it's taking all we've done so far and just basically interpreting it differently. I'm going to go here and maybe go to camera deep. And you can just check a few around, and it's not so bad. I'm going to go back to Adobe Standard. But there's something I don't like about the colors. And the great thing is, Lightroom is a fully non-destructive workflow, meaning you can change your mind as much as you want. I can take out the saturation and make it black and white. I can boost the color. I can do whatever I want. In this case, I want to try to go more toward the blue. Yeah, a little bit toward the blue. Let's see if I kill a little bit the magenta. I can go here to make it a bit more natural. I like that. But then I want to boost the vibrance and the saturation. And I'm thinking, now that I went more natural, I'm going to go back in my radial circle, which is here. I'm going to reselect it and add a bit more magenta because I took out a lot of the magenta. So now we have a contrast between blue and magenta. Okay? And I can make one here. And let's say I want to make another one that's kind of more yellowish there. I can right-click, duplicate what I did here, put this one over here, for example. I can make it even smaller. And in this case, I can back down the magenta and maybe just add a little bit more yellow. So now we've got one circle which is more magenta and one more yellow. Let's see here, before the radial circle, after. You see, here we have a little bit, let me see if I can zoom in on that and show you. We have a little bit of chromatic aberration here. So first I'm going to jump in and I'm going to zoom in here. So you see what I mean? You see here how we have a little bit of a fringe there? Okay, so that circle is not helping because it's making a big thing there. So what I can do is I can just erase it. It's going to help. It's going to help have a lot. Yeah, now we almost have no more chromatic aberration, but we still have some here. Let's see if we can get rid of it. So I'm going to go down to, I'm going to go back down to chromatic aberration. And this is something I'm just seeing now. And on chromatic aberration, you can go to manual and you can defringe even more. You see, there is a fringe that's kind of reddish, right? So we want to defringe that. So first, you have to decide what is the color of your fringe. So in this case, it was red. You see the red is here, so I'm going to go here and here. And you see, so now I'm saying anything which is, that's the hue is the color. I want to select this color, and here I'm going to take it out, basically. Now, if I go all the way, check this out. I'm going to zoom in. Look, the fringe, there is still a fringe, but it's got no color. Now, watch out because it does really strange things here. Look at this. So I did something really strange here, really strange there. You never want to go to a strong amount. So I'm just going to go maybe here. And now it's going to be back to normal. And it's just going to make this a little less obvious. And sometimes, you know, when you get a bit of halo in your photo, one thing that can help to erase that, and I consider this kind of like a bit halo, is you can go back here and add a little bit more of minus clarity. Minus clarity is going to make it even more looking more natural. I think on this one I want to add a bit more vibrance. Maybe I'm going to go back and add a bit more yellow. You see how I changed my viewpoint? Because it's a non-destructive workflow. That's really cool. But let's check it out. Before and after. And let's say you said, I don't know if I really like that. You have the possibility in Lightroom, because it's completely non-destructive, you can right-click and you can click here on Create a Virtual Copy. And, you know, and I can make this one much warmer, you know, with a lot more magenta, for example. And you know, I can select these two by pressing Shift. Okay, now I got the two selected, and I can press C for compare, and Shift Tab to go full screen. So on my left, I got the very warm version, and on the blue version, and then it's up to you, like whatever you prefer. Shift Tab to go back of that, and then you just click here to go back on this photo. But voila, that was our first project. I hope you like this. I hope this gets you excited about Lightroom. If you want to see it in full screen, you can press F for full screen and enjoy this beautiful view of Venice. And that was our project number 1.